Chapter 1626. However, it was clear that Yu Qinghua didn't need Gu Xingyin's approval at all. She had already included Gu Xingyin in her friend list. When Gu Xingyin returned to the classroom, her deskmate, Chen Jun, looked at her enviously, as if he was looking at a winner in life. Gu Xingyin was confused. "What's wrong?" Chen Jun said. "You're still pretending. Everyone in our class knows that you and the campus belle, Yu Qinghua, had lunch together at noon. You were talking and laughing. Everyone is saying that you two are together." He leaned closer and asked in a low voice, "Is this true?" Gu Xingyin calmly pushed his head away with her book. "You guys are overthinking it. It's fake." Chen Jun's face was full of disbelief. He said disdainfully, "How can it be fake? If there's nothing between you two, why are you so close?" Gu Xingyin said, "I'm a good friend. We're just friends." Chen Jun's expression became even more disdainful. "Yes, that's right. Before marriage, we're all friends." Gu Xingyin. She gave up on explaining. At the same time in the Yu family, if Gu Xingyin was here, she would be able to recognize the man who was standing there respectfully. It was the man with the buzz cut, who led the group to cause trouble for her. However, he wasn't wearing a funny hip-hop t-shirt now, and his face didn't have that sloppy expression. Sitting opposite him was a young man. If one had to use something to describe this man, it would be Jade. Exquisite and noble like Jade. It was as if it had been carefully nurtured by heavenly materials and earthly treasures. Cold like Jade. This man didn't have any cold expression on his face. In fact, he looked very peaceful. However, he just sat there like this. It always made people feel that there was an insurmountable distance between them. "The 12 of you went to cause trouble for someone, and you came back beaten black and blue?" The man's voice was very pleasant. His tone was neither fast nor slow. However, the buzzcut's heart was raised high. "It's our fault." This man was Yu Qinghua's brother, Yu Qingyin. A few days ago, when he heard his sister's complaint, he casually asked the buzzcut beside him to bring a few people to teach that kid a lesson. He forgot about this matter immediately. Today, he suddenly remembered to ask about it. He didn't expect to receive such a surprise. Yu Qingyin shook his head. "It's not your fault. One could fight against more than 10 trained people and still have the upper hand." This classmate of his sister didn't seem to be simple. The man with the buzz cut asked cautiously, "Then, do you need me to bring more people with me?" Yu Qingyin looked at him with a faint smile. "Haven't you embarrassed yourself enough?" The buzz cut lowered his head in shame. Yu Qingyin said, "It's just a small dispute between young people. Since you've already brought people over, this matter can be considered closed. Don't cause any more trouble." The man with the buzz cut lowered his head. Yes. Yu Qingyin didn't take this matter to heart. It wasn't until dinner that he casually asked, "Qinghua, how's school?" Yu Qinghua didn't understand. "It's pretty good." Yu Qingyin asked, "Your ex-boyfriend knows that you sent people to beat him. Didn't he say anything?" Their mother had passed away when they were young, and their father had always been elusive, so they had been relying on each other since they were young. When Yu Qinghua heard the words ex-boyfriend, she looked conflicted. She said, "Don't say ex-boyfriend. He's not my ex-boyfriend. There was a misunderstanding between us." Chapter 1627. Yu Qingyin was a little curious. He still remembered how hurt and angry his sister looked when she came home 2 days ago. Yu Qingyin didn't even doubt that her younger sister hated that boy called Mo Bei to the bone. She was fine so quickly. Thinking about what his sister said, the two of them had become good friends? From a heartless man to a good friend, and Qinghua didn't seem to hate him at all when she talked about him. This was the first time Yu Qingyin was curious about this mysterious boy. After all, he knew his sister well. Qinghua wasn't the kind of girl who didn't have a high IQ. She wouldn't be so easily won over with just a few words. Because of this, Yu Qingyin was curious. What did that boy do to make his sister's attitude change so drastically? Yu Qinghua didn't know what her brother was thinking. If she knew that Gu Xingyin was being targeted by her brother, she would definitely light a candle for her. No matter what, being targeted by her brother wasn't a good thing. Gu Xingyin still didn't know that she had attracted the interest of a certain big shot. Ever since she told her father about it, she and Mother Mo didn't even bother to give face at home. Every day when she came home from school, she pretended that she didn't see anyone at home and walked away without looking at them. Originally, she had a good relationship with her brother, Mo Bachin. But Mother Mo obviously didn't want her son to be too close to her. She didn't know what she had taught her son in private. But once when Gu Xingyin reached out to hug him, Mo Bachin visibly shrank back. Gu Xingyin was stunned. Soon after, she calmly withdrew her hand and turned to go upstairs without hesitation. Because of this, Mo Zhongliang and Mother Mo had an intense argument. Speaking of which, Mo Bei's parents had a good relationship. Mother Mo was the typical kind of woman who only cared about her husband and children at home and never got involved in her husband's business outside. The first argument between the two of them was because of Mo Bei. Ever since their first quarrel, the quarrel between the two of them had become a common occurrence. And this time, Mother Mo's actions completely ignited Father Mo's anger. Su Lihua, do you know what you're doing? Bei is your son. He was Beichen's brother. Look at yourself. What have you taught Beichin? Who told him to distance himself from his own brother? Mo Zhongliang was furious. He really couldn't understand his wife. Why did she do this? Su Lihua's childhood education taught her to be submissive when facing her husband. She didn't argue and just stood there calmly, allowing her husband to vent his anger. Little did he know that such an attitude was even more infuriating than a direct rebuttal. Right now, I'm very worried about what Beichin will become in your hands. I'll call Mother to come over and bring Beichin over. You should calm down. Mo Zhongliang dropped these words and planned to leave. Only now did Su Lihua truly feel flustered. Her son was hers. What did Mo Zhongliang mean by this? Were they going to forcibly separate her from Beichin? You can't do that. Su Lihua screamed. Mo Zhongliang looked at his gentle and virtuous wife. There was no tenderness in his eyes. He said coldly, "No, I can." Chapter 1628. Su Lihua's tears rolled down her cheeks. Beichin is still so young. How could you bear to let him leave his mother? Is he really your son? How could you be so heartless? Mo Zhongliang was already furious. When he heard Su Lihua's words, he exploded. I wanted to ask you the same question, Su Lihua. Isn't Beichin your son? How could you bear to treat him like this? Su Lihua opened her mouth, but she didn't care. Mo Beichin wasn't her son. She only had one son, Beichin. Seeing that she was silent, the light in Mo Zhongliang's eyes dimmed. He was completely disappointed in his wife. Mo Zhongliang's parents had moved out when Mo Zhongliang and his wife got married. The old couple had bought a villa in a city in the south. They spent most of the year traveling and enjoying life. Hearing her son's request, old Madame Mo was surprised. However, she still rushed over with old Master Mo the next day. What's going on? Old Madame Mo's silver hair was neatly combed. She was wearing a half-modified cheongsam, with a shawl around her shoulders. The emerald jade ring on her finger was shining with a warm light. She was a very elegant old lady. She knew her son. If it wasn't something serious, he wouldn't have asked them to come back in such a hurry. Mo Zhongliang asked the nanny to bring Mo Beichin out to play. Then, in front of his wife, Su Lihua, he told the two elders everything that had happened. After hearing his son's words, old Master Mo was so angry that he couldn't speak for a long time. Old Madame Mo's face also turned cold. Su Lihua. She called her daughter-in-law's name coldly. Before Su Lihua married Mo Zhongliang, she was very afraid of this mother-in-law. Now that she was a mother of two, she couldn't help but shudder when she heard this. Seeing this, old Madame Mo's heart flashed with disappointment. Back then, she was very dissatisfied with this daughter-in-law. It wasn't because her status was too low, but because her knowledge was too shallow. Old Madame Mo always felt that she couldn't be the young madam of the Mo family. But back then, Mo Zhongliang had insisted on being with her. As a mother, she could not argue with him. She thought that with her by the side, Su Lihua would slowly develop the bearing of a lady of a wealthy family. But looking at it today, it was obvious that Su Lihua hadn't made any progress after all these years. Thinking about what her son had said, no matter how well-mannered old Madame Mo was, she could not help but feel angry. What the hell is going on in your head? He alienated his own children and taught his younger son to be estranged from his own elder brother. What are you trying to do? Did my Mo clan offend you? Su Lihua's face turned pale when she heard the responsibility. She subconsciously looked at her husband, but Mo Zhongliang didn't look at her. Su Lihua mustered up her courage and said, "What can I do? Mo Bei isn't close to me, so I can only be closer to Beichen." Chapter 1629. Mo Zhongliang did not expect that Su Lihua would say something so stupid instead of arguing with him. What did she mean by not being close to him and speaking ill of him? What did she think of her son as? She even guarded against him. Old Madame Mo was so angry that her chest heaved up and down. "My heart aches for my Bei. How could he be treated like that?" Old Master Mo was also infuriated. Mo Bei was conceived not long after Mo Zhongliang, and Su Lihua got married. At that time, Old Master Mo and his wife became grandparents for the first time. They had high hopes for their grandson. They even stayed here for a few months just to see their grandson every day. They were not annoying elders. They could tell that their daughter-in-law treasured their grandson, so they did not fight to carry him. They only took a few glances at him every day. It was because of this that Su Lihua hid Mo Bei's gender. When Mo Beichen was born, Old Master Mo and Old Madame Mo were still very happy. They even came back personally to bring gifts for their grandson. However, they did not have the same expectations as before. To them, Mo Bei was different. Of course, their hearts ached even more. Seeing that Su Lihua only lowered her head and did not speak, Old Madame Mo was unhappy. "Go back to your room and stay there. My head hurts just looking at you." Su Lihua raised her head and looked at Old Madame Mo. "Mom, you're not really going to take Beichen away, are you?" Old Madame Mo's expression turned cold. "Look at you. I'm afraid that you'll ruin my grandson." Su Lihua said anxiously, "No, Beichen is different from Bei. I'll teach him well." She realized that she had said something wrong and quickly shut her mouth. But it was too late. The three people present had heard her words clearly. Mo Zhongliang was furious. "Su Lihua, what do you mean? What do you mean by Bei is different from Beichen? What are you hiding from me?" "Huh." Su Lihua's face was pale as she kept her mouth shut. At this moment, a clear voice came from the door. "I know why. I'm different from Beichen." The three of them then realized that Gu Xingyin was standing at the door with her bag on her back. They could not tell if she was happy or angry. They did not know how long she had been listening. "Bei." Old Madame Mo called out to her first. Gu Xingyin put down her school bag and walked to Old Madame Mo and Old Master Mo. "Grandma, Grandpa." If it were any other time, Old Madame Mo would have held on to Gu Xingyin's hand and questioned her for a long time. But now, it was clear that she had more pressing matters to attend to. Gu Xingyin glanced at Su Lihua. Su Lihua was looking at her in horror, as if she was afraid that Gu Xingyin would spill the beans. Seeing Su Lihua's expression, the other three became even more suspicious. Gu Xingyin turned her face away and said to Old Master Mo and Old Madame Mo, "Can you ask Mother to leave for a while and look after her?" Chapter 1631. Mo Zhongliang felt so guilty that he didn't dare to look at his daughter. He couldn't even imagine how his daughter had survived all these years. Whether it was during her childhood when she listened to her mother's words and tried her best to hide the fact that she was different from others, or when she realized that she was just a substitute for a dead person. He had always thought that her biological mother had taken good care of her. He even wondered how his daughter felt every time she heard someone call him Mo Bei. Before today, for a whole 17 years, only one person in this world knew that she was called Mo Beiyan. But the only person who knew her true identity, who was supposed to be the closest person to her, had never called her Mo Beiyan. Her mother had personally said that she lived for her brother. If that was the case, how much damage would it cause to a child? Su Lihua didn't deserve to be a mother. He wasn't a qualified father either. "Yener." For the first time, his voice trembled as he called out his daughter's name. Gu Xingyin's heart trembled. She raised her head and called Mo Zhongliang Dad. Looking at his daughter's usual smile, Mo Zhongliang's heart was filled with bitterness. He held back the tears that were about to fall from his eyes as he softly reprimanded Gu Xingyin. "Why didn't you tell Dad about such an important matter?" Gu Xingyin was silent for a moment before she replied in a low voice. "I was scared." Mo Bayan was really scared. She was scared that her family would hate her like her mother, and hate her for lying to them. When I was young, Mom told me that if I wasn't a son, Dad would find another woman outside, and we would be chased out. When I grew up and found out about this, I didn't dare to say anything. Gu Xingyin was almost trembling as she said the rest of her words. I was scared that you wouldn't like my daughter either. I was scared that you would like Mo Bei and not Mo Beiyan. Before she could finish speaking, Mo Zhongliang could no longer hold back and pulled her into his arms. You child, why are you so silly? Mo Zhongliang hugged his daughter's shoulders tightly. She was clearly so thin and small. With such a heavy burden on her body, it must be very painful, right? Old Madame Mo looked at the father and daughter hugging each other, and the tears that she had just held back flowed out again. She wiped her tears with a handkerchief and said coldly, "Call that woman Su Lihua in. I want to ask her where she got the guts to do such a thing. What makes you think that the Mo family won't like our granddaughter?" At this moment, old Madame Mo really hated Su Lihua. She even had the thought of tearing her apart. Mo Zhongliang loosened Gu Xingyin in his arms. Go and sit beside your grandmother. He walked out of the living room and opened the door. Sure enough, he saw Su Lihua standing outside anxiously. Chapter 1632. Mo Zhongliang did not speak to her. He took her hand and dragged her into the living room. Su Lihua stood firm with great difficulty and saw that everyone in the living room was looking at her with unkind expressions. She was a little flustered. Looking at Gu Xingyin sitting in old Madame Mo's arms, she was unsure if she had told them the truth. However, Mo Zhongliang could not hold it in any longer. He almost roared out, Su Lihua, let me ask you, all these years, when have I ever treated you badly? Have I ever looked at another woman more than once? What made you think that I would despise you just because you gave birth to a daughter? Has anyone in the Mo family ever said that they didn't like daughters? Su Lihua was stunned. When Mo Zhongliang said this, it was obvious that Mo Beiyan had revealed her biggest secret. Seeing that she was silent, Mo Zhongliang pointed at Gu Xingyin and said, "This person is the daughter you gave birth to after 10 months of pregnancy. She is your own flesh and blood. She is not a tool for you to consolidate your position, and she is not a substitute for anyone." In the end, he looked at his wife, who seemed to have never known him, in disappointment and said, Su Lihua, don't you feel guilty for doing such a thing? Su Lihua's body trembled. She raised her head and looked at her husband, who was looking at her with disappointment, her in-laws who were looking at her coldly, and her daughter who was looking at her with indifference. She felt as if something had left her. She said blankly, "The son is supposed to inherit the family business. At that time, I hurt my body giving birth to the two of them. The doctor said that it would be difficult for me to get pregnant again. A daughter is supposed to be married off. No matter how much I raise her, she will not mature." Hearing her words, old Madame Mo's eyes flashed with disgust. Su Lihua, look at the situation now. What kind of logic is this? Su Lihua looked at her mother-in-law, whom she had always been afraid of, and replied subconsciously, "My family has always told me this since I was young. My sister and I, our family, our entire place, daughters are like spilled water. They are not favored, and will not get anything in the family in the future. They are all losers." She spoke slowly, as if the more detailed she was, the more she could prove that her point of view was correct. Old Madame Mo looked at Su Lihua, as if she was looking at something dirty. She said with disgust, "Su Lihua, when you think about these things, have you ever thought that you are a woman?" Su Lihua wanted to say, "I know, but this is how the world works. In the future, the son will be the pillar of the family, and the daughter will be married off to someone else. What's the point of taking care of someone else?" But when she looked at her parents-in-law and her husband's eyes, she didn't dare to say those words out loud. Mo Zhongliang looked at his wife. Chapter 1633. When Su Lihua heard this, she staggered. She never thought that her husband would actually say such things to her, because of this matter. Divorce? What would a woman of her age do after a divorce? Her family had always been proud of having a daughter who had married into a wealthy family. If she were divorced, they would definitely not accept her. She suddenly raised her head and looked at Mo Zhongliang. "You want to divorce me because of this?" I married into the Mo family for so many years, and helped you take care of the family. I even gave birth to Beichen. You want to divorce me because of this matter? Mo Zhongliang's heart turned cold when he heard her still mention the fact that she had given birth to a son. After more than 20 years, he finally realized how big a gap there was between his thoughts and his wife's. He could no longer communicate with her. Mo Zhongliang turned his head away and did not want to look at her. I will find a good lawyer and settle the division of assets. Don't worry. It will be enough for you to live a good life for the rest of your life. Su Lihua supported herself on the sofa with difficulty. She looked at her husband's cold face, then at her parents-in-law, who also had cold expressions, and her daughter, who was looking at her like she was a stranger. At this time, no one was willing to speak up for her. Su Lihua did not feel that she had committed any unforgivable mistake. She had asked Mo Bei to dress up as a man, so that they could live a better life. Was this necessary? She looked at Mo Bei with a hopeful gaze. Bei, you don't want to leave Mom, right? Mom was so good to you when you were young. Can you bear to see Mom being kicked out of the house? Gu Xingyin lowered her eyes. You are indeed good to Mo Bei, but I am Gu Xingyin. This woman still refused to give up. Gu Xingyin thought that she was not stupid. She was just selfish to the extreme. Looking at her daughter's cold expression, Su Lihua had a feeling that this was indeed the case. Look, this was her daughter. When her biological mother was in trouble, she didn't even say a word to plead for leniency. With such a daughter, what's the use of treating her so well with all your heart? If Gu Xingyin knew what she was thinking, he would probably laugh at her. It had always been a matter of changing hearts. You treat me as nothing, and don't have any feelings for me. Why do you expect me to hug your leg and kneel down and lick your boots? When Su Lihua saw that Gu Xingyin had no chance, she immediately thought of her youngest son. Where's Beichen? If we get divorced, what will happen to Beichen? She asked. Old Madame Mo said in a deep voice. Our Mo family's grandson naturally doesn't need you to worry about him. In other words, Mo Beichen was staying in the Mo family. Su Lihua retorted. Beichen is still so young. Our relationship is so good. How can he leave his mother? How can you be so heartless as to separate us? Chapter 1634. In the end, Su Lihua still divorced Mo Zhongliang. Old Madame Mo's words were simple. If you agree to the divorce now, I will let Zhongliang and you go through the normal legal procedures to divide the assets. With the Mo family's wealth, you will get a lot of things. But if you don't agree, I will immediately contact the lawyer to prepare the documents. We will meet in court. Old Madame Mo's gaze was cold as ice. Su Lihua, even if you are ignorant of the law, you should know the consequences if the things you have done are exposed. I can easily make you leave the marriage with nothing. When the time comes, you won't get anything. Old Madame Mo's words were mostly meant as a threat. If it was someone who was scheming, they might not be frightened by her. However, it was enough to scare Su Lihua. As old Madame Mo expected, Su Lihua was silent for a while with a pale face. In the end, she agreed to the divorce. When Gu Xingyin lifted her head, she happened to see the deep disappointment and pain in her father's eyes. After all, they had been husband and wife for more than 20 years. No matter what, they still had feelings for each other. But the things Su Lihua had done were too ridiculous. Mo Zhongliang could not forgive her. Mo Beichen was still young. His family kept these things from him, and did not let him know at all. It was only when he could not find his mother that he started to bawl. But children were forgetful. Old Madame Mo was good at raising children. Within a week, Mo Beichen had returned to how he was before. It was as if he could not remember that his mother was not by his side. As for Gu Xingyin's side, the reason for being raised as a boy by her biological mother was too ridiculous. It would be embarrassing if word got out. The few of them discussed for a while, and decided to wait until Gu Xingyin was 18 years old. They would use the reason that a master had read her fortune when she was young. He said that there would be a calamity in her life, and she had to be raised as a boy before the age of 18 to avoid it. For a wealthy family like theirs, they trusted the fortune tellers very much. It was not strange that they would use such a reason. However, Beiyan will have to suffer for a while. Old Madame Mo held her granddaughter's hand and said apologetically. Gu Xingyin smiled. Anyway, I've been used to dressing as a man for so many years. This is nothing to me. What she said was the truth, but in the ears of the elders, it made them feel even more sorry for her. The students of Chuanan First High School realized that their school hunk Mo Bei's personality seemed to have changed again. Her dyed brown hair was dyed back, and her non-mainstream clothes were gone. Even the strange earrings on her hands and ears were removed. In the next month's monthly exam, Mo Bei, whose results had plummeted, returned to the first row. It was as if the top student and school hunk of the past had returned. Chapter 1635. Although the teacher felt that this student had changed a little, he attributed it to the rebelliousness of adolescence. Obviously, Mo Bei's rebellious period had passed. As long as it was developing in a good direction, they were happy to see it. "You little brat, you're so cool." Chen Jun looked at Gu Xingyin and sighed. Gu Xingyin had heard such comments many times in the past few days. At first, she was very confused and didn't understand what Chen Jun was talking about, so she asked foolishly. Then Chen Jun's answer shocked her. "Look, people like us are usually very careful when talking to girls. When they talk to us, they are also very formal. But when it comes to you..." Chen Jun's eyes were full of yearning. "All the girls in the class are your best friends. And you even have a campus belle as your girlfriend. You little brat. You're simply a winner in life." Gu Xingyin. She thought about it. Probably to these young boys who were still in their second year of middle school, someone like her could really be considered a winner in life. In fact, Gu Xingyin didn't understand either. She clearly had the same face, so why was she so popular recently? Chen Jun was still lamenting that he could only blame his parents for not giving him a good look. At noon, Yu Qingyue came to look for Gu Xingyin again. Under the clear gaze of the students in the class, Gu Xingyin helplessly got up and walked out of the classroom. Ever since she found out that Gu Xingyin was a girl and defined their relationship as good friends, Yu Qingyue liked to play with this new friend of hers. She stood outside the classroom for a while and watched Gu Xingyin get along with the girls in the class quite happily. Now she joked, "I couldn't tell that you're quite popular in class." Gu Xingyin casually replied, "I don't know why either. I wasn't this popular in the past." Hearing this, Yu Qingyue took a step back and carefully looked at Gu Xingyin. She smiled and said, "I know why." "Gu Xingyin?" Yu Qingyue said matter-of-factly, "Because you've become prettier." Gu Xingyin. She knew that she couldn't expect to hear any serious answer from Yu Qingyue. In front of others, Yu Qingyue was a sweet and delicate little princess. But when you really came into contact with her, you would find that this girl was completely a person with a godly logic. Her way of thinking seemed to always be different from ordinary people. For example, Gu Xingyin had a hard time keeping up with her. Seeing the look of disbelief on Gu Xingyin's face, Yu Qingyue pouted and said, "I'm telling the truth. You really do look a lot better than before." It was also much tastier. Mo Bei's facial features were very beautiful, as if they were delicately drawn. If she was dressed as a girl, she would definitely be an extremely beautiful and elegant beauty. But if she was dressed as a boy, it would be that kind of androgynous delicate. Chapter 1636. For example, right now, Yu Qingyue was standing 3 steps away from Gu Xingyin, looking at the young man who was casually standing in the same spot. The golden sunlight fell on her face, and her fair skin seemed to be transparent. She opened her glass-like eyes and looked at him in confusion. Her black hair obediently fell behind her ears, revealing her flawless and beautiful face. Yu Qingyue couldn't help but take a step back while holding her chest. It was simply too lethal. Gu Xingyin frowned and looked at her. "What's wrong with you?" Yu Qingyue answered very honestly. "I was mesmerized by your beauty." Gu Xingyin. Seeing her helpless look, Yu Qingyue knew that she thought she was joking again. She pursed her lips and said, "Now I'm really glad that you look like a boy. Otherwise, I wouldn't be able to keep my title as the campus belle." Gu Xingyin raised her eyebrows. "I thought you didn't care about these things." Yu Qingyue spread her hands. "I don't care now, but who knows if I won't care in the future." She looked at Gu Xingyin and said, "I know why you're so popular. Also, if I'm not wrong, although you're very popular in class, There shouldn't be many girls who want to confess to you, right? Gu Xingyin was surprised. How did you know? Yu Qinghua smiled foolishly. I know, but I'm not telling you. The reason was simple. When Yu Qinghua saw Gu Xingyin under the sun, although she was mesmerized by his beauty, she didn't have any romantic thoughts in her heart. Although girls liked to look at faces, when they were looking for a boyfriend, they wanted to find someone who could give them a sense of security and protect them. They didn't want someone like Gu Xingyin, who looked more beautiful and delicate than herself. At first glance, she felt that she should be pampered and protected in the palm of her hand. Just like Yu Qinghua, when she looked at Gu Xingyin's face, she thought, he's so cute. I want to be friends with him and give him chocolate. Such a cute boy, I must protect him well. As Yu Qinghua thought about it, she didn't know where her thoughts had flown off to. A strange smile unconsciously appeared on her face. Gu Xingyin felt a little flustered as she watched. She reached out and waved her hand in front of Yu Qinghua's eyes. What are you thinking about? I still haven't told you why you're looking for me. Yu Qinghua came back to her senses and finally remembered why she was looking for Gu Xingyin. Thinking of this matter, her expression immediately became serious. She looked at Gu Xingyin and said in a heavy tone, My brother said that he wants to see you. Gu Xingyin. Miss, your tone makes me feel that meeting your brother is the same as courting death. Yu Qinghua sighed and looked at Gu Xingyin with guilt. It's all my fault, Bei. Didn't I feel like you dumped me back then? In a fit of anger, I asked my brother's subordinates to teach you a lesson. Chapter 1637. Yu Qinghua's face was bitter. It's all my fault. My brother probably wants to meet the person who can coax me to be his friend after dumping me. Gu Xingyin was speechless. She asked tentatively, So your brother doesn't mean any harm to me, does he? Yu Qinghua nodded. That's right. He doesn't mean any harm. He just wants to see you. Gu Xingyin felt a little relieved. But soon, she saw Yu Qinghua's sad face. Even if my brother doesn't mean any harm, he's still very scary. Gu Xingyin was speechless. Just how scary was this person to be able to make his own sister so scared? In the end, Yu Qinghua could only pat Gu Xingyin's shoulder and look like she was on her own. Since my brother said that he wants to see you, he will definitely come to see you soon. But don't be too scared. I told him that you're my good friend. He won't make things difficult for you. Gu Xingyin really wanted to tease her. Yu Qinghua, although you say that, your expression doesn't sound convincing at all. She asked. When will your brother come to see me? Yu Qinghua shook her head. I don't know. It depends on his mood. Gu Xingyin sighed helplessly. Doesn't that mean you didn't tell me? Yu Qinghua imitated her and sighed. I'm just giving you a heads up in advance. If anything unusual happens, you'll be mentally prepared. Gu Xingyin was speechless. She felt that this girl's description was a little scary. In the end, Gu Xingyin knew nothing except that Yu Qinghua's brother was coming to see her. After parting with Yu Qinghua, Gu Xingyin returned to her seat. She asked the system to bring up Yu Qinghua's brother's information. The system said, This character only has a background after the original plot, so other than the general information, there is no extra information. Gu Xingyin looked at the information provided by the system. Yu Qingyin, male, 28 years old, the prince of the largest underground force in Chuannan City's Sea Province. Although he was the crown prince, he was actually the person in charge of the entire Sea Province. This was because the nominal leader, the father of the Yu siblings, had been living abroad for a long time. He had almost handed over all the power in the country to his son. Regarding this uncrowned king of the Sea Victory underground world, other than these few lines, there was no other additional information. Gu Xingyin didn't even know what his personality was like. Forget it, I'll just take it one step at a time. Just as Yu Qinghua had said, he didn't have any grudges with the other party, so they shouldn't make things difficult for him. After school, Gu Xingyin went home as usual. Not long after he left the school gate, he was stopped by someone. Gu Xingyin looked up and saw that it was a familiar face. It was the buzz-cut young man who had brought people to stop him not long ago. But this time, the buzz-cut young man didn't wear an eye-catching hip-hop shirt. He was dressed normally and looked quite handsome. Looking at his appearance, Gu Xingyin nodded. Luckily, The buzz-cut young man didn't wear a black suit and sunglasses in broad daylight, like in some TV dramas, as if he was afraid that people wouldn't know that he was a gangster. This time, the buzz-cut young man was very polite to Gu Xingyin. Our young master wants to see you. Chapter 1638. Gu Xingyin raised her eyebrows and said directly, "Lead the way." Seeing that she agreed without hesitation, the man with the buzz cut felt strange and asked, "Aren't you surprised at all?" Gu Xingyin said, "Your eldest daughter came to me today and said that her brother wanted to see me." She looked at the man with the buzz cut and said lazily, "Besides, if I said I didn't want to go, would you let me go home?" The man with the buzz cut shook his head without hesitation. "No. Since the eldest young master wants to see you, you have to go. That's it. Why should I waste my breath?" Gu Xingyin said indifferently, "Let's go. I'm also curious about what the eldest young master looks like." The man with the buzz cut didn't say anything, but opened the door for Gu Xingyin. About a minute later, the car stopped in a tea house. Gu Xingyin looked up at the antique plaque at the door of the tea house and secretly guessed the preferences of the eldest young master of the Yu family. She didn't show anything on her face and followed the man with the buzz cut into the tea house. The tea house had more than one floor. As soon as Gu Xingyin entered the door, she could see that there were many small independent rooms in the hall on the first floor. Many guests were tasting tea, but the front desk didn't greet them. The man with the buzz cut didn't even look to the side and directly led Gu Xingyin upstairs. They didn't stop on the second floor until they reached the third floor. The man with the buzz cut stood on the last wooden step and said to Gu Xingyin, "The eldest young master is upstairs. You can go in by yourself." Obviously, he didn't intend to go up with Gu Xingyin. Gu Xingyin nodded to him and turned to walk forward. She was wondering why the man with the buzz cut didn't make it clear. What if she couldn't find the room? But when she got closer, she realized why the man with the buzz cut didn't tell her. There was only one room on the third floor. The door was closed. There was no doorbell on the wooden door. Gu Xingyin gently knocked on the door twice. "Come in." A clear and slow male voice sounded. Gu Xingyin pushed the door open and walked in. This was a very large tea room. A man was sitting on a chair by the balcony. Beside him was a wooden fence with 2 pots of green plants. In front of him was a small round wooden table with a tea set on it. Next to it was a small stove with a pot of boiling water. In this day and age, there were actually people who made their own tea. Because of the light, Gu Xingyin couldn't see the man's face clearly. However, just by sitting there casually, coupled with the antique decorations around him, it made people feel as if they had entered a famous painting passed down from the last century. Seeing Gu Xingyin enter the door, the man raised his head and said in a gentle tone, "The guest is here? Please have a seat." Chapter 1639. She raised her head and saw a small wooden cabinet opposite her. The top of the cabinet was divided into many small compartments with different names. All of them were rare tea leaves. "Mobeyi?" The man's pleasant voice brought Gu Xingyin back to reality. She smiled. "I am Mobeyi. Are you Qingyu's brother?" Her tone was very natural, as if she was facing a good friend's brother, and not some underworld prince. In fact, the real Mobeyi would not know Yu Qingyun's identity. Yu Qingyun had not met someone who could talk to him so freely for a long time. He looked at the young master in front of him seriously. It had to be said that good-looking people always had privileges. At least now. Yu Qingyun looked at the beautiful young man, who was sitting comfortably on the chair, and squinting his eyes like a cat. His heart softened strangely. This was a rare thing for young Master Yu. Young Master Yu had always been a person who followed his heart. He thought for a while, and stretched out his right hand. "I am Yu Qingyu's brother Yu Qingyun. Yun as in Wen Tingyan." If the buzz-cut guy was beside him and saw this scene, he would probably widen his eyes. When did young master become so easy to talk to? And he even lowered himself to take the initiative to shake hands with him. Others did not know, but he had been with young master for so many years. He knew very well that although young master looked gentle and handsome on the outside, he was actually more arrogant than anyone else. If he did not like someone, no matter what, he would not even touch a finger of that person. This young man called Mobeyi. How did he catch young master's eye? It was not only the buzz-cut guy who did not understand. In fact, even Yu Qingyan himself did not know why his heart softened when he saw the young man. Gu Xingyin looked at the hand that was stretched out in front of her. This pair of hands was fair and beautiful with slender joints. It was a pair of hands that could make people scream. She put her hand on top of it. It was the same fair and soft hand, but it looked much slimmer than the former's. When they held each other like this, it was exceptionally harmonious. Both sides formally greeted each other. Gu Xingyin went straight to the point. I don't know. Why are you looking for me? Yu Qingyan frowned slightly because of the way Gu Xingyin addressed her. With his status, there were many people who addressed him as sir, and he was used to being addressed with honorifics. But that didn't include the young man in front of him. He felt that the person in front of him shouldn't be so distant. Change the way you address me. He spoke as his heart moved. Gu Xingyin. Is there a problem? She saw that the young man in front of her had a blank look on his face. His crystal-clear eyes reflected her own figure, and they were filled with pure confusion. Judging from his skills, this young man was clearly an expert. But when he looked at people, he always had a pure naivety. Such a contrast had a strong attraction to most people. Yu Qingyan felt that she had probably become one of these people. He said gently, You are Qingyue's good friend. You can call me Big Brother, or Big Brother Yu. Gu Xingyin blinked. She deeply felt that Yu Qingyue was probably tricking her on purpose. The person in front of her was obviously easy to talk to. Yu Qingyue. I'm not taking the blame for this. Chapter 1640. Gu Xingyin readily accepted his advice and said with a smile, Brother Yu. It was okay to call him Brother Yu. But he couldn't bring himself to call him Brother Yu. Gu Xingyin felt relieved when he felt that the other party didn't want to cause trouble for him. The environment here was good, and the atmosphere was great. It was like a different world from the bustling and fast-paced city of southern Sichuan. Gu Xingyin took a deep breath in satisfaction as he sniffed the tea fragrance in the room. He closed his eyes and revealed a satisfied smile. Yu Qingyan looked at the young man sitting across from him without blinking. His eyes were closed. At this distance, with Yu Qingyan's eyesight, he could clearly see the young man's long and thick eyelashes. They were like small fans covering the young man's eyes. They trembled slightly with the owner's eyes. Yu Qingyan's gaze moved down and fell on the young man's lips. He remembered reading a foreign poem a long time ago. In the poem, the poet used a metaphor to describe his first love. Her sweet lips were like rose petals in the morning dew, beautiful and fragrant. At that time, Yu Qingyan scoffed at this. He thought that only people who blindly fell in love would have beautiful eyes. How could there be such a beautiful person in this world? But now, Yu Qingyan felt that he was wrong. The young man's lips weren't thin. They were slightly pouted. The color was between a light pink and a gorgeous red. The shape of his lips was perfect. It made people want to go up and taste it. Yu Qingyan's expression changed. He actually had a physiological reaction to a young man he just met for the first time. Yu Qingyan's body moved slightly, and he inadvertently changed his sitting position. At this time, Gu Xingyin felt his gaze. She then remembered that there was someone sitting across from her. She was a bit embarrassed. Yu Qingyan just looked at her and asked, I saw you looking at the tea when you came in. Do you know tea? Of course, Gu Xingyin knew about it. In fact, he was quite proficient in it. Bei also learned some tea from his grandmother when he was young. It was just that he didn't have time to study it. Hearing Yu Qingyan's question, Gu Xingyin nodded. I know a little. Yu Qingyue smiled. Then Kitano-suk, do you mind brewing a pot of tea for me? Gu Xingyin saw that Yu Qingyan liked tea. She also had the idea of making friends with him. She nodded. I can try. Gu Xingyin stood up just as the water on the stove was boiling. Yu Qingyan was still sitting there, his gaze firmly locked onto the figure that was slightly bent over to make tea. Gu Xingyan's movements could be described as smooth as flowing water. It could be seen that she did not only know a thing or two as she claimed. Without more than 10 years of hard work, one would not be able to achieve this level of maturity. When the fragrance of the tea rose, Yu Qingyan's gaze moved down from the young man's face. Because of the height of the table, Gu Xingyan's body was slightly bent over. This movement caused the tight clothes to stretch and tightly stick to her back, completely revealing her beautiful waist. Yu Qingyun's gaze tightly locked onto that part of her body. He secretly sighed in his heart. Such a slender waist. He was afraid that he could hold it with one hand. Wait a minute. He coughed and unnaturally moved his gaze away. Chapter 1641. When he raised his head again, Yu Qingyun met Gu Xingyin's puzzled gaze. What's wrong? Are you not feeling well? Gu Xingyin asked. Yu Qingyun calmly said, I'm fine. Seeing that he was fine, Gu Xingyin continued to make tea. This time, Yu Qingyun's gaze was serious as he watched the youth use his white jade-like hands to hold the teapot. The clear water turned into a thin line as it poured into the cup filled with tea leaves. In an instant, mist-like water rose from the cup. At the same time, the mist spread out and lingered around the entire tea room. A trace of admiration flashed through Yu Qingyun's eyes. He loved tea and understood tea, so he always had a good impression of people who were proficient in this technique. Not to mention, he already had a good impression of Gu Xingyin. Gu Xingyin placed a cup of tea in front of Yu Qingyun. Try it. She also held a cup in her hand and sat across from Yu Qingyun, gently brushing away the foam. Gu Xingyin took a sip of the tea in the cup. Her eyes lit up. At the same time, Yu Qingyun's praise sounded. Good technique. Gu Xingyin lightly smiled and shook her head. It's good tea. If it wasn't for these top-quality tea leaves, it wouldn't have been able to make such an effect. Yu Qingyun shook her head. No, if there wasn't someone who could make tea, this tea would have been wasted. The two looked at each other and smiled. That afternoon, Gu Xingyin and Yu Qingyun chatted for a long time. The more they talked, the more amazed Yu Qingyun was. Her eyes were full of splendor as she looked at the youth in front of her. He was clearly so young, and his sister Qingyue was addicted to comic books all day long. But Mo Bei seemed to understand everything. And this kind of understanding wasn't superficial, but true mastery. Until Gu Xingyin received a call from home. Old Madame Mo worriedly asked why she hadn't returned home yet. Speaking of which, the Mo family's attitude towards Gu Xingyin had completely changed since they found out that their grandson was not their grandson but their granddaughter. Sons were meant to be trained, while daughters were meant to be spoiled. What's more, this daughter of his had been treated unfairly for more than 10 years. Now, Gu Xingyin was treated like the apple of everyone's eye in the Mo family. She was the kind of person who would not even give her the moon if she asked for it. However, she wasn't spoiled at all. Instead, she changed her previous rebellious attitude and became extremely obedient. This made her even more lovable. Usually, Gu Xingyin would return home on time after school. Today, it was already dark, and she still hadn't returned home. Naturally, her family was worried. After Gu Xingyin answered the call, he casually said a few words before hanging up. She raised her head. But before she could say anything, Yu Qingyun said considerately, I didn't think it through and made your family worry. Gu Xingyin smiled. I forgot to tell my family. Yu Qingyun stood up. Let me send you home. Gu Xingyin glanced at the dark night sky outside and didn't refuse. She wasn't old enough to own a car yet. It was much more convenient for Yu Qingyun to send her home, rather than taking a taxi. When Gu Xingyin stepped out of the door, she saw the buzz-cut young man standing outside. When he heard that the young master was going to personally send Gu Xingyin home, the buzz-cut young man was dumbfounded. He had been with the young master for so many years. Why didn't he know that the young master was such a warm-hearted person? He followed behind and watched from afar as the young master personally opened the car door for Mo Bei. The young master turned around and looked at him, who was in a daze. You can go home on your own. You don't have to follow me. Chapter 1642. The crew-cut young man felt that he might have seen a fake young master. However, he didn't dare say anything in front of Yu Qingyun. He obediently watched as the low-key black car disappeared into the night. When Gu Xingyin got out of the car, Yu Qingyun called out to her. He handed Gu Xingyin a business card. My contact information is on it. If you need anything in the future, you can look for me. Gu Xingyin glanced at it. She didn't seem to realize what the business card meant at all. She smiled and took it. Okay. She got out of the car and turned around to wave at Yu Qingyun. Yu Qingyun watched as her voice disappeared before he turned the car around and drove away. The next day, the moment Gu Xingyin entered the school, she saw Yu Qingyue waiting outside the classroom. Yu Qingyue looked a little nervous. When she saw Gu Xingyin, she hurriedly pulled her to the side. There were a few students passing by. When they saw this scene, a tacit smile appeared on their faces. Yu Qingyue didn't care about their misunderstanding. She pulled her a little nervously and asked, "My brother didn't do anything to you yesterday, right?" Gu Xingyin was speechless. "Girl, your words sound very misleading," she asked in confusion. "What could he do to me?" Yu Qingyue heaved a sigh of relief when she saw her like this. Last night, when Yu Qingyue's brother came home, she was sitting in the living room eating chips. Yu Qingyin frowned. "I told you to eat less junk food." Yu Qingyue smiled obsequiously. "I just ate a little." "Oh yeah, brother, why did you come home so late today?" Her brother had OCD. He basically didn't come home at a fixed time. So this situation was very abnormal. Yu Qingyue took off her suit jacket and said, "I went to see Mo Bei." Yu Qingyue was speechless. She looked at her brother sitting on the sofa and gulped. She said carefully, "Then, brother, you and him?" Yu Qingyin looked at his sister's nervous face and knew that she was worried about Mo Bei. He didn't know why, but he felt a little unhappy. He said faintly, "I chatted with him for a while. I think he's a good person." Being fancied by his brother was not something worth celebrating. At least, that was what Yu Qingyu knew. She still wanted to ask about the situation in a roundabout way, but was chased back to her bedroom by Yu Qingyin. Yu Qingyue, who had been on tenterhooks all night, woke up early in the morning and rushed to school. Seeing the undisguised worry on her face, Gu Xingyin felt warmth in his heart. But then he didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Was her brother that scary in this girl's heart? She felt that Yu Qingyin was quite good. When she said this, she saw Yu Qingyue's expression, as if she had seen a ghost. Yu Qingyue thought she might be hallucinating. "You think my brother is a good person?" Gu Xingyin nodded her head. "His looks are perfect, his temperament is outstanding, his demeanor is elegant, he is knowledgeable and knowledgeable. Most importantly, your brother is very amiable and gentlemanly. He even personally sent me home." Yu Qingyue, "I'm probably hallucinating." "No, other than hallucinating, I might also be hallucinating. In this world, there was actually someone who admired her brother so much. Forget about the description at the beginning. After all, her brother's appearance and temperament were indeed good. But the latter part, amiable? Gentlemanly? What the hell was that? Did her brother have that kind of thing?" Chapter 1643. Gu Xingyin was a little suspicious when he saw Yu Qingyue's shocked expression in front of him. Yu Qingyue held Gu Xingyin's hand and said earnestly, "Bei, you must keep your eyes open. Don't be fooled by my brother's facade. Let me tell you, he is a..." She frowned as she said this, as if she was afraid of something and did not continue. Gu Xingyin looked at Yu Qingyue suspiciously. She still could not understand why Yu Qingyue seemed so repulsed by her brother. Could it be that Yu Qingyue was like Mo Bei in the past, a teenager? Was that why she was so rebellious and repulsed by her parents who tried so hard to persuade her? Gu Xingyin thought about it carefully and felt that she might have found the truth. However, this was between the two siblings and she could not say anything. She could only smile at Yu Qingyue. Yu Qingyue looked at Gu Xingyin's expression of understanding. She thought that Gu Xingyin had taken her advice and was very satisfied. Therefore, both parties thought that they had found the truth and ended the conversation happily. Gu Xingyin did not see Yu Qingyin for a period of time after that. Yu Qingyue was happy to see this. She thought that her brother had gone to see Bei previously and treated him so gentlemanly. She thought that her brother was having a fit. Now, it was obvious that her brother had returned to normal and lost interest in Mo Bei. But in reality, Yu Qingyue was still too naive. Yu Qingyin was only hesitating during this period of time. When he finally made up his mind, it would be time for him to make his move. "Yan, grandma has something to ask you." Old Madame Mo and Old Master Mo had been staying in Chuannan City for the past 2 months because of their granddaughter's matter. They did not return to the small city they had settled down in. Gu Xingyin replied obediently, "Go ahead." When they were at home, they all called her Mo Bei Yan. Old Madame Mo, and the rest felt that it would be fine if they didn't know about Bai Yan's identity in the past. However, now that they knew about Bai Yan's true identity, they still called her Bai Yi in a house where no one else was around. It was a form of harm to her. Old Madame Emo looked at her granddaughter's neat short hair and loose white t-shirt. She couldn't help but feel a little sad. Girls of this age were at the age where they cared about their appearance. Which one of them didn't wear a skirt and secretly put on makeup? She collected her thoughts and said lovingly to Gu Xingyin, "Your grandfather and I plan to return to South City in the near future. We want to ask if you want to go back to South City with us?" Nanqing was where old Madame Emo and her husband had settled down. This was the result of a discussion between old Madame Emo and old Master Mo. If Gu Xingyin followed him to Nanqing, no one would recognize her there. Everything could start over, and she could live like a normal girl. Chapter 1644. For a rich kid like Mo Bei, having a diploma wasn't that important. However, having such an excellent piece of paper was still something to be proud of. Their granddaughter did not seem to have done anything wrong because of that incident. Since she was so motivated, the two elders of the Mo family naturally had no reason to take her away. Despite their reluctance, Gu Xingyin could only promise several times that she would be there to accompany them during the summer break. In the following days, she spent her days studying and having fun as usual. The only change was that Yu Qingyue and Gu Xingyin's relationship was getting better. On Friday night, Gu Xingyin and Yu Qingyue agreed to go shopping together the next day. After hanging up the phone, she heard the system's emotional voice. The host's ability to turn enemies into best friends is really extraordinary. Gu Xingyin smiled and replied, "You're flattering me." She was already used to the system's occasional sighs. Moreover, Gu Xingyin felt that as he experienced more missions and became more familiar with the system seemed to be no longer as cold as it was in the beginning. Although its voice was still calm and emotionless, there was not a trace of emotion. However, the words that he spoke sounded a little more humane. She did not know if it was an illusion, but Gu Xingyin kept this matter in her heart. The next day, Gu Xingyin and Yu Qingyue agreed to meet at 9 o'clock in the morning. After breakfast and saying goodbye to her family, Gu Xingyin refused to let the family's chauffeur send her. She simply hailed a taxi and left. "Bei." Yu Qingyue looked at Mo Bei and waved. Gu Xingyin walked over. Although it was called shopping, it was basically Yu Qingyue shopping, while Gu Xingyin occasionally gave her advice and carried her bags. At first, Yu Qingyue subconsciously complained, "It's rare for us to go shopping together. Why are you just watching me shop?" Then, she remembered Gu Xingyin's current state. She felt awkward. Yu Qingyue stuck out her tongue in embarrassment. "I'm sorry, Bei. I forgot about you." Gu Xingyin shook her head. "I don't care. I'll just buy some clothes later." Yu Qingyue quickly shook her head and said with a serious face, "You are so handsome. How can you buy clothes casually?" She glanced at Gu Xingyin and suddenly smiled. She leaned forward and whispered, "Although it's a pity that I can't see you in women's clothes, you're so good looking. Even if you wear men's clothes, you'll still be able to beat a bunch of handsome guys. I'll be your advisor later. I'll definitely buy 2 sets to make you even more attractive." Gu Xingyin facepalmed. Whatever. She compromised so easily because she understood Yu Qingyue's character. This young lady was probably very favored at home. If you didn't agree to her goal, she would have 100 ways to make you have no choice but to agree. Gu Xingyin didn't want to test her tolerance and waste time on this matter, so she just let Yu Qingyue do whatever she wanted. The shop assistant looked at the two of them and smiled. "The two of you seem to have a good relationship." Obviously, she had misunderstood their relationship and thought that they were a sweet couple who were in a relationship at a young age. There was no way to explain this. Yu Qingyue, on the other hand, was very carefree. She felt that it was very interesting to be misunderstood as a couple with Gu Xingyin. She smiled and held Gu Xingyin's arm. "Right? I think so too. Bei and I have a good relationship." Chapter 1645. The two of them went shopping in the morning and bought several sets of clothes. They ate lunch together and went to the amusement park in the afternoon. After a day, Gu Xingyin felt that the holiday was much more tiring than school. Gu Xingyin and Yu Qingyue only parted ways when the sky turned dark. The two of them went home separately. When Yu Qingyue got home, she found her older brother sitting on the sofa in an unusual manner. Seeing her come home, Yu Qingyue said slowly, "You're back?" Yu Qingyue expressed that she was flattered by this sudden concern. She handed the things in her hands to the nanny to carry back to her room. She poured herself a glass of orange juice and sat on the sofa. "I'm so tired." Yu Qingyun's face didn't show any emotions. He only asked, "Tired? Did you have fun?" Yu Qingyue took a sip of her drink and answered casually, "I had fun." But after she answered, she felt a little strange. Although she didn't feel any unhappiness from her brother's tone, based on her 10 years of experience with her brother, Yu Qingyue subconsciously felt that her brother was in a bad mood. As soon as this thought came to her mind, Yu Qingyue's entire body tensed up. She even became careful when she drank her drink. She didn't dare make a sound. Although her brother doted on her a lot, no one wanted to provoke an angry Yu Qingyun. She finished the drink in one gulp and immediately stood up with a smile. Brother, I just remembered that I have a lot of homework this weekend. I'll go upstairs and do it first." "Sit down." Yu Qingyun only said these two words, which successfully made Yu Qingyue freeze and sit back down. Oh no. Originally, it was just a hunch. But now, Yu Qingyue was sure that her brother was unhappy. And the reason for his unhappiness was most likely related to her. "God wants me to die." Yu Qingyue tried hard to recall what she had done recently. She really didn't provoke the devil. "Yu Qingyue, I didn't teach you that puppy love is wrong," said Yu Qingyun indifferently. "Huh?" Yu Qingyue was confused. She thought about it carefully and answered honestly, "No." "Yu Qingyun." He didn't say anything, but Yu Qingyue felt a little cold around her. Yu Qingyue cursed under her breath and immediately revealed a flattering smile. "Brother, you see, you were the one who raised me since I was young, right? You've taught me so well. How could I not know that puppy love is wrong? I don't need you to teach me that." Yu Qingyun nodded. "Your flattery is not bad." Yu Qingyue was overjoyed, thinking that she had escaped a calamity. The next moment her brother spoke again. "But no matter how beautiful your words are, you still have to be punished if you do something wrong." "Yu Qingyue." Yu Qingyun's sharp eyes looked at Yu Qingyue. "I'll give you a chance to confess. What is your relationship with Mo Bei?" "Huh? Why did it involve Beiyi again?" Yu Qingyue couldn't understand her brother's train of thought. Chapter 1646. After Yu Qingyue said this, she looked at her brother nervously. Actually, she didn't understand why her brother had such a big reaction to the news of puppy love. In the beginning, he didn't even care. When Yu Qingyun heard Yu Qingyue's words, he slowly repeated his sister's words. "Good friends." Yu Qingyue nodded profusely. "Yes, I don't think there's anything ambiguous about it." She thought about it and decided to sell her friend out for her own safety. "Brother, you've seen Bei before. She's even prettier than me. If I were to find a boyfriend like her, wouldn't I be looking for trouble? If I were to meet someone on the road, I don't think they'd be interested in me." Yu Qingyun's gaze swept across Yu Qingyue's face, and he nodded in agreement. "You do know your place." Yu Qingyue was speechless. "Brother, you're really my biological brother. How could you mock your biological sister like this?" But at least they were over this hurdle. Yu Qingyue had just heaved a sigh of relief when she heard her brother say, "But in the past, you were the one who said you were heartbroken and wanted to teach that guy a lesson." Yu Qingyue was speechless. She wished she could transmigrate back in time and slap herself in the face. Why did she have to complain about such a small matter? Yu Qingyue swore that she wasn't even as nervous as she was when she faced her class teacher. She smiled and said, "Weren't I young back then? I've never been in a relationship before, so when I saw a good-looking guy, I thought I liked him. Actually, I'm fine with it. Brother, if I really liked Bei, why would I be good friends with her?" In her heart, she was actually saying, "I want to like her, but she's the same gender as me." When Yu Qingyun heard this, he was finally satisfied. He asked, "In other words, you don't like Mo Bei at all? You're just normal friends with him?" Yu Qingyue nodded. Yu Qingyun said, "That's good." Yu Qingyue was speechless. Yu Qingyun said casually, Because I like him and want to pursue him. Yu Qinghua was speechless. Her mouth was agape, as if this was the first time she had met her brother. This sesame stuffing was evil. No, that was not the main point. Yu Qinghua looked strangely conflicted. But brother Beiyi is a man. She was still loyal, and did not reveal Gu Xingyin's biggest secret. Yu Qingyin glanced at her. So what? So what? Who would dare to say anything about what Yu Qingyin wanted to do? Yu Qinghua felt a headache coming on. To be honest, she didn't think her brother was a good lover at all. It was rare for her to see eye to eye with Mo Bei. She did not want her good friend to be ruined. If Yu Qingyin could hear her sister's inner thoughts, she would probably be so angry that she wanted to beat her up. How could she mock her own brother like that? Yu Qinghua said tentatively, "Our father won't allow you to find a man." Yu Qingyin said, "You don't have to worry about that. I naturally have a way to solve it." Yu Qinghua put up a final struggle. "I remember that you don't like men." Yu Qingyin said faintly, "I've never liked a woman who knows." Yu Qinghua, "My friend, this is all I can help you with." Yu Qinghua looked at her sister suspiciously. "You look like you don't want me to like Mo Bei." Chapter 1647. Yu Qinghua thought to herself, "Isn't that right? I really don't want you to harm her." However, she had always been a coward in front of her brother, so when her brother glanced at her coldly, she immediately shut her mouth. Yu Qingyin was very satisfied with his sister's tactfulness. He stood up and said, "I still have something to do, so I'll go take care of it. Have a good rest." Yu Qinghua silently watched as her brother's figure disappeared down the stairs. The next day, Gu Xingyin saw Yu Qinghua, who looked like she wanted to say something. "You didn't sleep well last night?" she asked suspiciously. The dark circles under Yu Qinghua's eyes were so obvious that she couldn't ignore it. Yu Qinghua looked at the delicious Gu Xingyin, lamented in her heart that the handsome young man was going to be eaten by her brother, the big bad wolf. She looked at Gu Xingyin uneasily and said, "Beiyi, I have something to ask you." Gu Xingyin nodded and said, "Go ahead." Yu Qinghua looked at Gu Xingyin and asked, "Do you have any thoughts of dating?" Gu Xingyin hesitated for a moment at the question. She looked at Yu Qinghua strangely, wondering if she still hadn't given up after knowing that she was a girl. She didn't hide her expression, so Yu Qinghua immediately saw through her. Yu Qinghua was speechless. She said unhappily, "Don't worry, I'm not interested in the same gender." Gu Xingyin was finally relieved. She pointed at herself. "Look at me now. Boys won't like me because I'm also a boy. If girls like me, I won't be together with them. Do you think I'll have the idea of falling in love?" Yu Qinghua thought about it and agreed, but her brother didn't care about this. She asked again, "Then, what if someone doesn't care about your gender and wants to be with you?" Gu Xingyin thought that someone was confessing to her through Yu Qinghua. She said without hesitation, "I'm not interested. I have someone I like." Yu Qinghua's mood didn't improve because of this answer. This was because her brother had never failed to get what he wanted. But when she looked at Gu Xingyin in front of her, she couldn't bring herself to say, "My brother likes you." In the end, she left with a conflicted expression. Gu Xingyin looked at her back view in confusion. So why did Yu Qinghua ask her to come here? Yu Qinghua knew that her brother wouldn't let her go, but she didn't expect him to act so quickly. After school, she happened to be looking for Gu Xingyin. When she arrived at Gu Xingyin's class, she was told that Mo Bei had been taken away. Not long after Yu Qinghua walked out of the school gate, she met the man with the buzz cut. Seeing her, the buzz cut man walked over and said, "Young master asked my miss to go home." Yu Qinghua looked at the buzz cut man in surprise. "Why are you here?" "Teas. Of the teas of tea." Qingyin nodded. Yu Qinghua sighed in her heart. What a beast. Qingyin looked at Yu Qinghua's expression and lowered his head. "Young master asked me to escort you home and pass a message to you." Yu Qinghua felt that it wasn't something good, but she still asked, "What message?" Qingyin replied, "Tell Yu Qinghua to go back by herself. Also don't meddle in his business." His business probably meant that he wanted to pursue Gu Xingyin. Chapter 1648. Yu Qinghua said angrily, "Does he think that my sister is a troublemaker?" As soon as she asked the question, She realized who she was asking. Yu Qinghua looked at the man with the buzz cut, who seemed to be struggling to say something. She suddenly said, "Stop answering." This guy was one of her brother's most honest men. Yu Qinghua was very afraid that he would really say yes. On the other hand, Gu Xingyin didn't know about Yu Qinghua's dilemma. She saw Yu Qingyin standing by the flower bed not long after she left the classroom. Gu Xingyin went to Chuanan First High School, which was the best high school in Chuanan City. The school management was very strict. During class, outsiders were not allowed to enter. But Yu Qingyin just had to appear here. Gu Xingyin wasn't surprised. Rules were usually set by a small group of people, and served a small group of people. Powerful to such an extent as Yu Qingyin, ordinary rules really did not count for much in his eyes. Yu Qingyin wasn't dressed very formally. Instead, he was dressed very casually. Yu Qingyin seemed to be different from the gentleman whom Gu Xingyin saw in the tea room last time. Yu Qingyin, who was dressed casually, walked on campus. She looked like a college student who was still in school. While Gu Xingyin was walking in his direction, he saw at least 2 girls walking over to strike up a conversation with him. However, Yu Qingyin rejected them. "What a coincidence to meet you here." Gu Xingyin greeted him with a smile. She asked, "Are you here for Qinghua? She should be coming down soon." Yu Qingyin looked at the young man in front of him and shook his head. "No, I'm here for you." "For me?" Gu Xingyin was surprised. "Why are you looking for me?" she asked. Yu Qingyin suddenly turned around. "Come with me." He turned and walked toward the school gate. Gu Xingyin followed behind in confusion and asked, "Aren't we waiting for Qinghua?" Even though Yu Qingyin was her biological sister, Yu Qingyin was still a little unhappy when she heard Yu Qinghua call her Qinghua. He said lightly, "Qinghua has someone to send her back." Gu Xingyin didn't say anything. She didn't know where Yu Qingyin was taking her, but she knew that this man wouldn't do anything bad to her. At the school gate, a familiar black car was parked there. Gu Xingyin's sharp eyes noticed that it was the car that Yu Qingyin drove the last time. Yu Qingyin opened the car door for her. His meaning couldn't be more obvious. Gu Xingyin frowned. "I thought that if you invited me to do something, you should at least tell me your purpose." There were very few people who could say such righteous words in front of the eldest young master of the Yu family. But Yu Qingyin wasn't angry. In his eyes, the person in front of him was different from the others. So he said in a low voice, "Sorry, I didn't make it clear to you. I've prepared a surprise for you." Gu Xingyin was surprised. "For me?" Chapter 1650. Gu Xingyin came back to her senses. She got out of the car and looked up to see a very large manor. "This is?" She was surprised. Yu Qingyin said concisely, "I bought a manor a few years ago." Gu Xingyin silently looked at it. Yes, Chuannan City was a very developed city in the country. It was not inferior to the capital. Although this was a suburb and was not as expensive as the city center, it could still be considered expensive. How rich would one have to be to buy a manor here? She followed Yu Qingyin inside. As soon as they entered, a cool breeze hit them. Gu Xingyin felt that the heat on her body had dissipated a lot. Compared to the heat outside, this was a paradise that everyone yearned for in the summer. When they came in, Gu Xingyin realized how big this place was. As she walked forward, her gaze suddenly froze, and even her breathing stopped. Looking up, it was a lotus pond that she could not see the end of. It was the season for lotus flowers to bloom. Countless pink and white lotus flowers swayed with the breeze on the round green lotus leaves. The entire air was filled with the faint fragrance of lotus flowers. Yu Qingyin looked at her and stopped. Seeing her reaction, he was very satisfied. He explained, "Do you like it? When I bought the farmstead a few years ago, I had someone planned it. When I saw you last time, although I didn't ask, I felt that you would probably like lotus flowers. So I took the liberty to invite you over to take a look. The flowering period is just right. After a while, it won't be so beautiful." In fact, Yu Qingyin felt that his feeling was very strange. He had only met the youth in front of him once, but when he looked at him, he felt a strange sense of familiarity. He felt that he should know him very well. He did not know where this illusion came from. For example, this lotus pond. When he bought this place to build a manor, His first thought when he saw this living water lake was to plant lotus flowers in it. He felt that there would be someone who would accompany him to see it in the future. That kind of feeling was very strange, but Yu Qingyan rarely did not consider the benefits and followed her own heart. When she saw Gu Xingyin for the first time, Yu Qingyan felt that she might have found the person who could accompany her to see the lotus flowers. When he brought Gu Xingyin here, he was still a little uncertain. What if she didn't like it? But now that he saw Gu Xingyin's reaction, his heart suddenly calmed down. It seemed that he had made the right move. Gu Xingyin just stood there in a daze. She thought back to the end of the last world. Before He Lu left, he looked at her with regret, saying that he had planted a pond full of lotus flowers for her. But he couldn't accompany her to see them. So now, was Yu Qingyan trying to make up for the regrets of her previous life? Chapter 1652. As if it was a coincidence, when Yu Qingyan finished speaking, the last bit of light in the sky disappeared. Night had completely fallen, but beside Gu Xingyin, another layer of light lit up. As if an invisible switch had been turned on, faint lights began to light up around her, moving into the distance. A belt of light extended out just like that. This light wasn't very bright, but it was enough for people to see everything around them. The entire villa was lit up by the same light. Unlike the lotus pond that covered the sky and covered the earth during the day, when one looked at it under the light at night, it didn't have the stunning beauty that it had during the day. Instead, it had a different kind of graceful gentleness. She was like a beauty in a formal dress during the day, who had removed her exquisite makeup and changed into plain clothes. She was still as gentle and charming as ever. It's really beautiful. Gu Xingyin didn't hide her love for it at all. Yu Qingyan turned his head to look at the smiling Gu Xingyin. If it was him, he definitely wouldn't be in the mood to do these things. But looking at the smile on the face in front of him, he suddenly felt that it was all worth it. It wasn't over yet. He softly said, "Open your eyes, there's something even more beautiful." Gu Xingyin was a bit confused. There's more? What could be more beautiful than this? Although she was confused, her heart was filled with anticipation. Look. Following his words, the light around him suddenly dimmed. At the same time, countless fireflies slowly rose from the lotus pond. Gu Xingyin couldn't count how many there were, because as far as the eye could see, there were small fireflies dancing in the night, displaying their beauty that belonged to the night. How many fireflies were there? In this world, fireflies were becoming rarer and rarer. They were almost nowhere to be seen in the city. Although the suburbs were a bit better, it couldn't be this scary. How did Yu Qingyan do it? Heavens! Gu Xingyin couldn't use words to describe her shock at this moment. When she was the death god, she had also created a similar surprise for Qiao Zhiha. But that time, he had completely cheated, and the scale was far less shocking than what Yu Qingyan had displayed in front of him. After all, Yu Qingyan was just an ordinary human. Too beautiful. Gu Xingyin didn't say anything, but Yu Qingyan clearly saw the sigh in her eyes. After understanding her feelings, Yu Qingyan had been thinking about how to enter the other party's heart. He thought of many ways, but in the end, he still chose this one. To let the other party clearly feel how much effort he had put in for him. In fact, he didn't even need to say it out loud. As long as the other party wanted to, he would definitely be able to sense how much he had done for him. As long as you like it. This was the umpteenth time today that Yu Qingyan had said this sentence. Chapter 1653. Gu Xingyin only smiled. Brother you're so good and romantic, how could she not understand your feelings? Yu Qingyan smiled lightly. Really? I hope so. The two quietly enjoyed the scenery in the cool summer night for a while. In the end, Yu Qingyan proposed to send Gu Xingyin home. Gu Xingyin's expression revealed a strong reluctance. In the hot summer, resting in such a place was more comfortable than any air-conditioned room. Yu Qingyan naturally saw her reluctance. He smiled and said, "When you're free, you can come often." He thought for a bit and added, "You can bring Qingyue with you. That way, you won't be bored alone." The last sentence was obviously because he was afraid that Gu Xingyin would be embarrassed alone. In the car, Gu Xingyin said to Yu Qingyan apologetically, "I'm really sorry. I heard from Qingyue that you're usually very busy, but you wasted so much time with me today. Yu Qingyan shook his head. How can it be considered a waste? I'm also very happy. Just treat it as a vacation for myself. When Gu Xingyin was about to reach home, she received a call from Emo Zhongliang. When he heard that his daughter was about to reach home, he specially went to the gate to pick up his daughter. Then, he saw Yu Qingyan, who got out of the car to open the door for his daughter, Emo Zhongliang. He saw the man he couldn't afford to offend acting intimately with his daughter. He even personally walked in front of him and called him uncle. Emo Zhongliang heard his stiff voice say a few words to the young master of the Yu family. Then he and his daughter watched Yu Qingyan leave. After Yu Qingyan's car left, Emo Zhongliang and his daughter entered the house together. How do you know the young master of the Yu family? Emo Zhongliang seemed a bit worried. He was a simple businessman and had almost no business dealings with the Yu family. But to establish a foothold in Chuannan City, other than having a business mind, they also needed to be well informed. For example, they needed to know who they couldn't afford to offend. The Yu family was categorized by Emo Zhongliang as one of the most untouchable families. Whether it was in the government in the dark or in the business world, the Yu family had its own huge network of connections. If he accidentally offended such a colossus, he might not even know how he died. The Yu clan was much younger than Qing Yun. Although Emo Zhongliang had not interacted with him before, he had seen him from afar at some banquets. He definitely would not be mistaken. As a father, Emo Zhongliang didn't want his daughter to come into contact with such a dangerous person. Hearing Emo Zhongliang's words, Gu Xingyin replied, his sister, Yu Qingyue, is my good friend. I got to know brother Yu through Qingyu. Chapter 1655. Gu Xingyin looked at her and couldn't help but say, it's okay. We can go there next time. Your brother said that he doesn't have time to play. You can take me with you. When Yu Qingyue heard this, she sighed in her heart. Who is the real sister? However, when she heard Gu Xingyin mention the lotus pond, Yu Qingyue remembered something. Yu Qingyan bought the villa a few years ago. When they saw the natural lake, many people said that they could do something. However, Yu Qingyan didn't listen to any of their suggestions. He invited people to plant lotuses in the lake. Yu Qingyue went there with her brother a few times. Every time, she saw her brother standing quietly by the lake. He didn't do anything or say anything, but Yu Qingyue always felt that her brother's back looked very lonely. Sometimes, Yu Qingyue would have a ridiculous thought in her mind. For example, her brother planted the lotuses specially for someone. He was just waiting for that person to enjoy the beautiful scenery with him. However, every time such a thought came to her mind, Yu Qingyue would dismiss it. How could someone like her brother do such a thing? In Yu Qingyue's heart, her brother, Yu Qingyun, was a man who was almost perfect in all aspects except for love. How could a man like him do such a thing like a Casanova? However, when she heard Gu Xingyin's description today, that strange thought came to Yu Qingyue's mind again. Perhaps her brother had really been waiting for someone all this time. That person might be Mo Bei. Although it sounded really ridiculous, Yu Qingyue had to admit that her brother was like a completely different person when facing Mo Bei. The things he did were also different from usual. Yu Qingyue didn't think about it carefully before. Now that she thought about it, the Yu Qingyan mentioned by Gu Xingyin was actually completely different from the Yu Qingyan in the eyes of others. She used to think that her brother was pretending in front of Mo Bei, or that Mo Bei couldn't see her brother's true colors clearly. However, now that she thought about it carefully, maybe the truth was that her brother was really like that in front of Mo Bei. Yu Qingyue exhaled. Somehow, he felt as if he had discovered something incredible. Gu Xingyin looked at the girl in front of her and couldn't help but ask, Qingyue, what are you thinking about? Yu Qingyue came back to her senses and stared at Gu Xingyin without blinking. So maybe Bei hated her future sister-in-law? Yu Qingyue blinked and thought about Gu Xingyin's age. She couldn't help but sigh again. Her brother was really a beast. He wouldn't even let an underage girl go. After hearing Gu Xingyin's words, she coughed dryly and said, I was just wondering why my brother treats you so well. Even as a sister, I feel jealous? She shook her head as she spoke. but her eyes were fixed on Gu Xingyin, as if she was waiting for her reaction. Chapter 1656. She said this naturally, as though she did not understand what Yu Qinghua was implying. Yu Qinghua sighed. That's different. At least, my brother has never taken me out to experience any surprises or to see fireflies. Gu Xingyin was speechless. Gu Xingyin thought carefully. Maybe he thinks you don't have the taste. Yu Qinghua was speechless. She stared at Gu Xingyin with a pained expression. You've changed, Bei. Really? You're no longer the caring and gentle Bei I used to know. Gu Xingyin did not want to play along with this girl at all, so he exposed her ruthlessly. I'm sorry, but I've never been caring and gentle. Yu Qinghua sighed and said to Gu Xingyin, Bei, you can't look like this now. Do you want to look like this for the rest of your life? Both of them knew what she meant by look like this. Gu Xingyin shook his head. Of course not. I've told you before that there's a special reason for this. I'll look like a girl again in the future. Yu Qinghua's eyes lit up. Really? Gu Xingyin nodded. Of course. When will you look like this again? Yu Qinghua was very concerned about this. She muttered, look at you now. All the people who like you are girls. It's impossible for you to like them back. What if you fall in love with someone, and that person sees you as a boy, and treats you like a brother? Gu Xingyin laughed. You're thinking too much. I won't fall in love before I solve my own problems. Yu Qinghua asked secretly. It can't be, right? Haven't you fallen in love with anyone after all these years? Gu Xingyin thought carefully about Mo Bei's memories and shook his head. Mo Bei couldn't even take care of his own problems in the past. How could he have the time to fall in love with someone else? Yu Qinghua finally got the answer she wanted. She sighed in her heart. Her brother still needed to work hard. Gu Xingyin said, class is about to start. If you don't leave now, you'll be late. Yu Qinghua looked at the time and quickly said, okay, I'll go first. Remember, if you want to go to that villa in the future, remember to bring me along. Gu Xingyin waved at her. When she returned to the classroom, Gu Xingyin was not surprised to receive envious gazes. Chen Jun winked at her. Not bad. The campus belle comes to see you almost every day. Gu Xingyin was too lazy to explain. She just smiled when she heard this. Yu Qinghua realized that once she accepted the fact that Mo Bei was her future sister-in-law, she actually found it quite cute. Anyway, she had a good relationship with Bei. Rather than letting her brother find a sister-in-law whom he was not familiar with, or even on bad terms with, Mo Bei, who knew her well, was obviously a better choice. As for whether or not her brother could take down Mo Bei, Yu Qinghua shrugged her shoulders and said, that would depend on his ability. Chapter 1658. The two of them chatted as they walked. Yu Qingyan pretended to ask casually, there must be a lot of girls in school who like a handsome boy with good grades like you, right? Gu Xingyin blushed when she heard the question. She denied it flatly. How could there be such a thing? Yu Qingyan looked at the thin layer of pink on her fair skin. It was very beautiful, but it made his mood a little gloomy, because from what he understood, the person in front of him became like this because she was shy, and the reason for her shyness was because she liked him. He suppressed the unhappiness in his heart and said casually, what's there to be embarrassed about? For a man, being liked by a lot of girls is something to be proud of. I heard from Qingyu that you received a love letter yesterday. He said those words because he wanted to get more information from Gu Xingyin, but he did not expect that Gu Xingyin's focus was completely different from his. Yu Qingyan had just finished speaking when he saw the girl beside him looking at him with burning eyes. Gu Xingyin looked at him. Brother, you have a good family background. You're handsome and gentle. There must be a lot of girls who like you, right? Yu Qingyan was stunned for a moment. He clearly didn't expect Gu Xingyin to suddenly ask such a question. He thought for a moment and replied, I don't know. Gu Xingyin's face showed that she didn't believe him. You don't know? How can you not know whether people like you or not? Yu Qingyan said seriously, I'm not lying to you, Bei. I've always been a narrow-minded person. If it's someone I care about, I'll take care of everything for them. I'll even care about their matters more than they do themselves. But if it's someone I don't like, I won't care about any of their thoughts at all. So those women, whether they like me or not, I don't care at all. Why would I have the time to think about their thoughts? He did not hide his cold side in front of Gu Xingyin, which he had never shown before. To Yu Qingyan one day, he would show his true face in front of Mo Bei. It was impossible for him to play the role of a gentle and considerate gentleman in front of her for the rest of his life. The only thing he needed to pay attention to was how to express himself. Gu Xingyin could feel that Yu Qingyan was looking at her very seriously when she said those words. She would subconsciously follow the other party's words, and then think about the interactions during this period of time. Then, she would discover that she was the type of person that Yu Qingyan said he cared about. Then, Yu Qingyan noticed that Gu Xingyan's ears had turned red. Because of what he had said, he was very satisfied with the effect of his words. Take your time. He told himself that a direct confession would frighten him. She wanted to enter his world bit by bit, so that he would know how good she was to him, and get used to having her by his side. He would use his patience and tolerance to weave a net around him, from loose to tight. When the prey was completely used to the existence of the net, and was completely defenseless, it was time for the hunter to reel in the net. He would slowly savor his most delicious prey. The journey wasn't far. Soon, the two of them saw the gate of the school. Gu Xingyin turned to say goodbye to Yu Qingyan. Thank you for accompanying me on this journey. Goodbye. Yu Qingyan looked at her quietly. Goodbye. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support. And don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.